The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame. Turn your memorabilia into a work of art.
This is The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and by Renewal by Andersen, with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and happy Mother's Day to everyone out there, including my mom. We've got a little bit of a Mother's Day theme, at least to the start of the show, but we got some really interesting stuff. Most interesting stuff might be something we're doing later in the show, where we've gone back and looked at since 2000, all of the first-time coaches hired into the SEC, their records and how they did. I think that's interesting. You should hang around and take a look at that. Let's jump right into today's Mother's Day show. It's brought to you by Bill Hotz and Associates, as I mentioned, and let me tell you, nothing can ruin your day like a car accident. But if you've been injured in a wreck, you need to make sure it doesn't ruin your life with bills, expenses, missed time from work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The attorneys at Bill Hotz and Associates know your rights. They know how to fight for them. They've done it for thousands of clients. They've won millions of dollars for their clients. If you've been injured wrongfully in an accident in your car, give the guys at Bill Hotz and Associates a call. All right. I want to welcome in the guys that I call most Sundays. We got Jimmy Hines right here, Mike Strange, Ryan Callahan back with us, Chuck Cavaleris down there. Guys, thanks for all of you being here on Mother's Day. We'll start with a theme question here. And we'll talk a little bit about Tennessee expectations. We did a poll earlier this week. I'll show that in a few minutes, but I want to get your take. Tennessee fans should throw the mother of all parties. We'll go back to the Saddam Hussein thing, mother of this. It'd be the mother of all parties if Tennessee does what this fall? What would be reason for celebration at Tennessee, considering this year's team, this year's roster, what you've been through, 4-8 last year? What are you partying for?
You want to be reasonable?
Reasonable.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm going to get the emails and tweets that say, you never throw a party unless you win the national. Yeah, we get it. My point is, what are legitimate expectations? What do you think would be, this was a good job done by Jeremy Pruitt and that staff?
I'd say 7 wins.
So party at 7 wins?
Yeah, we're going to be lower than some people's bar. Certainly 8 would be the mother of all parties. Maybe 7's the mother-in-law of all parties.
Yeah. I might go a little lower. I think 6. I think if you get 6 in a bowl, that's not the goal at Tennessee. But this year, people have been asking me, what do you think he could do? If he gets to 6, man, give the guy a parade. I think they're in trouble. But so we got a 6, we got a 7.
Yeah, the thing that's hard to discern too is you look at the team and you think, God, these 4 stars, were they not coached well, or are they just not that good? So you try to sift through some of that, but I'll go 7.
I'm just concerned about that. Along the line of scrimmage in the SEC, you don't have a lot of depth in offense and defense, and that scares me. Mike Strange, what are you throwing the party for?
There are a lot of ways to get to 6 wins or 7 wins, but I'm going to narrow it down to one game. Beat Florida. Just beat the Gators.
Right.
You got that's one day. You don't if you beat Florida on September the whatever, just go out in the streets and party.
Party if you beat Florida.
Because, I mean, they got a new coach, you got a new coach. What, you've beaten them once? And
technically, they got a new coach who chose them over you, too.
So beat the Gators and party all night.
All right, what do you got, Ryan?
I like that answer. That's a good one. I'm going to go with 7 wins. I agree with 6 being a more reasonable goal, but I do agree that it's going to be harder for them to get to 6 wins than people might think. But, yeah, I don't think people will be celebrating in the streets for 6 wins. I think 7 wins. I think that's one people will say clearly they exceeded expectations in a lot of people's minds. So I'll go 7. But 6, I'm with you, John. That's a good season if they get to 6.
What do you think, Chuck?
I was right there with what Mike said. Beat Florida, because if you look at the schedule, if you don't win that game, it may be into October or later before you do. I would also say, how about beat one of those teams from the SEC West? That would be the mother of all parties, because what's it been?
Yes,
2010?
They'd be beating Alabama or top 10 Auburn. So
exactly.
That would be
that would be a mother of all parties.
Yeah. Of course, Chuck will be partying if they go 1-11. There'll just be parties going on. Let me show you what you said on Twitter this week. We put up a poll question. Asked folks what they saw as your minimum expectation for the Vols this fall. 17% said they have no expectations in year one. 17% say, hey, we're cool. 23% say Pruitt has to win 5 games, top last year. Just be better than last year. So you got 40% there saying no expectations or just be better than last year. 55% say 6 wins in a bowl game. That's the minimum expectation. That's 95% say 6 wins in a bowl game or less. You only have 5% that say got to win 8 or more. but here's the thing. Now, those are May numbers.
Yes, that's do the same poll.
Yeah, I'll do that same poll probably in July and probably in August, and it will be much higher. But I am surprised, though. That's a pretty reasonable expectation that you got 95% realizing, I think, that 6 wins for this roster in this league, considering where you were last year, 6 wins would be acceptable.
And that was done after Cinco de Mayo?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's reasonable. Now, again, I'm going to have people that say, Vol fans are accepting too little. I don't think anybody's accepting. I think people are just realistic in year one. I don't think anybody's going to be saying that in year 2 for Jeremy Pruitt. 6 wins is fine.
At the same time, that's still more than half the people that are expecting 6 wins, which we're mostly agreeing will be tough for this team. So I think it shows you the danger of year one. If Jeremy Pruitt just goes 4-8 or 5-7, you're already probably convincing some people that you might not be, as good as Kirby Smart or whatever it might be. But I think people will be a little upset if they don't get to 6.
And part of the bar for this team, I think, is going to be how are you losing? Are they relatively close games? Are you in there? Are you showing improvement as the season goes along? Did you avoid this terrible injury bug that seems to have plagued you for the last 2 or 3 seasons?
If they don't get past that expectation, 6 wins, all right, let's say they don't get to 6 wins, do you think the blame goes to Pruitt, or do you think people are still going to say, well, he's having to fix what Butch Jones broke? I think some of that first year, the blame's going to go to Butch Jones.
I do too. Now, getting back to what Chuck said, if you're losing these games 44-0, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Or if you're making some questionable decisions late in the game that cost you, like allowing somebody to throw a 63-yard touchdown pass in the last second.
Again.
But other than that, again. But other than that, I think most of it will be, hey, he's trying to fix this mess. Now, of course, with that mess, they shouldn't have been 4-8, right? They should have been better than that. Yeah. But I do think a lot of that will go back to he's trying to overcome the mess that Butch Jones left and change the culture.
I think it's about how it happens. I agree. I think if their offense struggles, for instance, people will point to the fact that he didn't bring in the most veteran offensive staff. There's a number of different scenarios for how this could play out, but I think it is about how they get there in addition to just whether they get to 6 wins or not. And
let's face it, you're going to have to be winning some recruiting battles too.
Yeah.
As you guys well know, that may be your biggest victories for some time.
We'll have a recruiting segment a little later where Mr. Callahan will update us on all the goings-on over there. Up next, what is the #1 problem? What's the #1 obstacle standing between this Tennessee team and those expectations? We think it'll be tough to hit 6 wins. Everybody here says party if it's 7, certainly. What's the biggest obstacle to getting 6 or 7 wins this year? Plenty of Vol football stuff all day long. Come on back on the Sports Source.